Former President Trump is taking legal action challenging the FBI's search of his Mar-a-Lago home. The New York Times reports that the government has obtained more than 300 classified documents from the estate since Trump left office. And now the former president is seeking a neutral third-party attorney to oversee the evidence taken in the search. So Robert Costa is in Palm Beach, Florida, with more on all of this. Bob, good morning.
Good morning. The former president's 21-page motion is not just a legal move, but a political argument. It claims he is the front runner for the Republican nomination in 2024, and it casts the investigation in political terms. The Justice Department's response: this is not political. 2 weeks after the FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago home, former President Trump is asking a federal court in Florida to stop federal investigators from reviewing the documents taken until a special master or a third-party attorney can be appointed. In the legal filing, he also requests that the FBI return any documents that went beyond the scope of the search warrant.
A special master would be almost like an extra judge to take an independent look at those.
The filing also reads as a political pitch ahead of a possible run in 2024, in which Trump's lawyers make unsubstantiated claims of investigators being partisan, saying law enforcement cannot be used as a weapon for political purposes, and go on to say that the matter at hand involves not only the constitutional rights of President Trump, but also the preservation of executive privilege. National security lawyer Bradley Moss.
And by admitting this is really all just about executive privilege, Donald Trump is admitting these are official records, not personal records. This filing was all about trying to shore up his position with the Republican base and hoping that no one notices it's not properly constructed. It's going to get slammed by the judge.
So far, a U.S. official tells CBS News that the Justice Department has retrieved at least 150 classified documents from the boxes Trump handed over to the National Archives earlier this year. And the New York Times reports that since federal agents re-engaged with Trump's legal team this summer and then searched his home, that number has climbed, with more than 300 documents with classified markings obtained by the Justice Department.
I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter.
The Justice Department released this statement after the motion was filed Monday, saying the search was authorized by a federal court upon the required finding of probable cause, while the former president continued to rail against the search he called a break-in.
All he knows is to throw things at the wall and to try to file various motions or lawsuits to try to delay things. It's worked for him in the past. What the problem he's got here is it's a criminal investigation. A grand jury has been convened. Federal prosecutors already had to get a search warrant for his property. That's something he's never faced before.
This all comes as a Florida federal judge prepares to decide this week whether to release a redacted version of the affidavit that led to the FBI search at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. That affidavit could reveal more about why FBI agents went in and why they believe a crime might have been committed.
All right, Bob, so much to talk about, so I just want to get right into it. First off, a special master, the possible appointment of this special master. How could this benefit the former president, and could it backfire?
A special master request is a push to have a neutral party review evidence and documents, possibly return them, because the person who makes this motion believes that they need someone beyond the federal government to review these documents and evidence. It's not something that's guaranteed to happen at this point. The Trump legal team waited weeks to make this filing in Florida federal court. And so we're going to have to see how this plays out in the coming days. But it does show that there's a standoff over the evidence and how it's being handled by the Justice Department. It's important to note, however, that as the Trump legal team makes this filing, the Justice Department has already had a so-called filter team looking over the evidence for quite some time. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out and how that affects the Justice Department's work that's already been done.
So we've heard a bunch of different things over the past couple of weeks about how all these documents ended up in Florida, including at one point the suggestion that the former president had declassified them sort of with a wave of his hand. But at the end of the day, even though we've been talking about classification and documents, this is not the reason that the FBI went into Mar-a-Lago. When you look at the search warrant, they're not talking about classifications of documents. They're talking about possible violations of, as the gentleman in your story said, criminal statutes, Espionage Act, obstruction of justice. It doesn't matter if a document is classified or unclassified. It could still be used in a way that could be harmful to the United States, right?
This all can be traced back to a decision then President Trump made in the final days of his administration. He decided to take, based on our reporting, boxes from the White House residence to Florida without giving them to the National Archives to be processed. That decision led the National Archives to red flag what was in those boxes. They discovered some classified material in those boxes, and that led to this federal investigation. The way this is supposed to play out as an administration leaves and a new presidency begins is to have the National Archives deal with the presidential records, then give them over to the former president so they can be used in a presidential library or storage or for whatever reason. But because that National Archives component was left out and Trump just took them back, there was a vulnerability in the eyes of federal investigators that he had documents in his possession, defense documents, national security classified documents that he should not have. And that raised the concern about the Espionage Act you mentioned, which deals not with espionage per se, but if you look at the law, it deals with handling defense documents outside of the normal channels, which is improper and illegal according to that statute. And so you see the former president now confronting all of these norms when it comes to document handling and laws that federal investigators are worried that he skirted, and it could have consequences for national security.
And Bob, before we let you go, just a little bit of clarification on something else. We've heard the Trump teams threaten to release surveillance video from Mar-a-Lago of the FBI search. But then in reading about this whole situation, it appears as if, to me, that the FBI had also watched surveillance video, their own surveillance video, which is what led to their concern about the documents being moved or being stored at a storage facility in Mar-a-Lago. When we talk about surveillance video in this whole situation, what are we talking about? We're talking about surveillance video of FBI agents searching Trump's residence, or surveillance video that the FBI agents viewed that led them to be concerned?
When we think about video with this investigation, there are two particular fronts to pay attention to. One is the video surveillance tapes from Mar-a-Lago that were subpoenaed by the federal government as they tried to figure out who had access to the storage areas at Mar-a-Lago, right behind me here in Palm Beach, Florida. And they saw in these tapes, based on our reporting, that a lot of people seem to have access to the storage areas where these boxes, some classified material was kept. And because of that, they wanted to go in and secure that material through the FBI search. So the FBI has videotape, surveillance tape of Mar-a-Lago trying to watch to see who went in and who went out of the storage area. At the same time, there's another video part of this story, which is the video of the FBI agents going in to search the property. That video surveillance tape is in the hands of Trump and his legal team. They are now deciding whether to release that publicly or to even use it as part of a political campaign at some point in the future.
Thank you for the clarification, Bob Costa. Appreciate it.